Baseball has finished its investigation into the Astros, and now we are here to talk about it and answer your questions as well with former Major League scout Jeremy Booth. I'm Jason Bristol. Here it is, dropped earlier this afternoon, the official news release with the results of the investigation. I think everybody by now knows what has happened to the Astros, but I'll give a quick.
Okay.
Jeff Luhnow suspended for a year. A.J. Hinch suspended for a year. The loss of first and second round draft picks in 2 drafts and a $5 million fine as a result of that. Then A.J. Hinch and Jeff Luhnow are fired, dismissed by the Astros. Was this the right move by baseball, and was this the right move by the Astros?
It was the right move by the Astros. Jim Crane took a step up in my book today by firing both Jeff Luhnow and A.J. Hinch immediately upon hearing of the discipline. However, Major League Baseball, it's light. It's light.
Light.
Yeah, it's light for me. You have something where these guys went above and beyond to accomplish a goal of telling the rest of baseball before they showed up that it didn't exist. And by these guys, let's be clear, I mean Jeff Luhnow. I mean, that's his mantra. We don't need baseball evaluators. We don't need traditional development. We don't need people who have been in this game, who have dedicated to it. He minimized players. He minimized executives. He minimized scouts. Anything he could do. And in 2017, wins a World Series. Everything stops with him, right? Everything stops with him. So, his statement today was it wasn't me, basically. It wasn't me. It was you. It was you. It was absolutely him. And it's a weak way of throwing everybody in the organization under the bus but him. That's not what leaders do. You don't refer to people as low-level employees. You don't demean your players, which, internally and in baseball circles he's known to do. You don't do that now. So, for him not to get a lifetime suspension is extremely light. Now, in this game, getting a year suspension essentially means you're probably not going to work again. And that's good if that happens. But it was extremely light. He should be banished from the game forever, never to return. With A.J. Hinch, it's his dugout. It's his dugout. It's his clubhouse. And the excuse of, I should have stopped it, but I didn't, or, I wasn't involved in it, I didn't endorse it. The fact that you don't stop it means you endorse it. And as a matter of fact, Jason, you and I were sitting there when they were playing the Yankees, and he's talking about, hey, if somebody has, proof of this, they want to talk about my team, they need to put their name by it, and, we're not doing this, and if that's all it took to ruffle the Yankees, it's really telling. That
it was condescending. It was condescending.
A couple months ago, we have that happening, and now, guess what? You're done. You're done.
So, Chloe, can you play the clip that says Hinch soundbite? This is from October during the series when A.J. Hinch addresses the allegations that the Astros are up to some funny business by stealing signs.
Had I known that it would take something like that to set off the Yankees or any other team, we would have practiced it in spring training. So when we have people that are unnamed, or you guys have sources that are giving you information, I suggest they put their name by it if they're so passionate about it to comment about my team or my players.
So that was A.J. Hinch back in October. That's a really bad look right now.
I remember looking at you going, did that just happen? Like, you can't do that. If you're going to call somebody out with that type of statement, you better be right. You better be right. And to know this happened, like you knew it happened. You knew what was going on. It's not like you didn't know. I mean, there's a report today saying, he broke a couple monitors? That he was that frustrated?
Apparently, he was frustrated by the situation. Now, he, in his statement, I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately, but basically says that he did not endorse it, but you're saying the fact that he allowed it to happen in his dugout, that is endorsing it.
If I'm a manager and there's some cheating going on, there's something happening that's going to impugn what my players are doing on the field, what our club is achieving, with a really good ball club, by the way. It's not like these guys had bad talent. With a really good ball club, first thing I'm doing is getting rid of that person. I'm not keeping you around. There's nothing saying you have to finish the year. There's nothing saying that players have to stay. Roster changes happen, coaching changes happen all the time. If somebody's going to impugn your credibility or damage the franchise, you have a duty to get rid of that person, okay? So let's just give him benefit of the doubt saying he didn't come up with it. It's pretty clear he didn't come up with the idea, okay? Get rid of the person that did. Send a message to your clubhouse. That's not going to happen. Stand up for something in the game that allows your legacy and the legacy you're building with that club and that organization to happen. The sad part is the biggest losers in all this isn't even A.J. Hinch. It's not Jeff Luhnow. It's the fans and the city of Houston who've waited their entire lives for a World Series championship and out of the rest of the world say it's tainted.
Checking in on Facebook, Christy, where was that question? Basically, I think she wanted to know what happens to Alex Cora. Will he get a lifetime ban?
So Alex Cora has now done this with, let me rephrase.
Alleged. Well, it's not alleged. It's in here as a statement of fact with the Astros.
With the Astros, but he's under investigation now with a different team. And as that now happens with a second club, ironically, the club that won the 2018 World Series, which gives Alex Cora not one World Series ring but two, both against the Los Angeles Dodgers, you have to figure that Major League Baseball, when they get through with him, it's going to be a little worse than A.J. Hinch, and it should be. If you've done this twice and you've got two World Series rings, it should be worse than what happened with the team that did it once. So I can't imagine Alex Cora stays in Boston very long. I think the Red Sox will let it run its course and do what they should. Major League Baseball has already got Alex Cora once. They're going to get him the second time. That's going to be it.
A lot of people we've heard throughout this is all the teams do it. They all do this. Is that true that they all do this? I would say no. Now, I think there's some form of sign stealing, but it's the technology, it's the how in this situation.
Sign stealing isn't the problem, Jason. It's not at all. It's part of the game. The problem is using the technology to do so in real time to change the outcome of the game as it happens. Look, I'm going to remind everybody, Pete Rose is banned for life for betting on his team to win. The games he was managing. He didn't bet against him to lose and throw games. He bet on his team to win. This is somebody who took World Series championships away by cheating with technology. If you're not good enough, you're tipping your pitches on the mound and hitters get it, fine. If you're not good enough to protect your signs and base coaches or runners on second, they get that. That's part of the game. Figure it out. But you can't use technology. You can't be in a situation where you're getting things in real time and getting it to the hitter before the pitch happens. Not knowing what the pitch is coming, the best in the game hit what, 300? I mean, it's the best ever, and that's not even happening today much anymore. The people who know what's coming, it's like taking BP.
Yeah.
It's an unfair advantage,
yeah.
And you can't do that. And so, again, it's not a situation that really has any justifying or
a justification.
or merits have happened. It shouldn't have done.
So, Jeremy, I would say it's been months now.
Yeah.
Jeremy was predicting a harsh punishment. And a lot of people, Astros fans, did not like to hear that. And in fact, on our podcast, Extra Bases with Bristol and Booth, and on Twitter, a lot of people were hammering you for what you said. Now, you defended your take and your comments on our Extra Bases podcast. Chloe, I think that's the clip there with, yes, right there. Here's what Jeremy had to say shortly after that you said, listen, Major League Baseball is going to come down on this team, and it will be bad, and I know you don't want to hear it, but this is my take.
Anybody with a brain knows something went on. What, you don't know, but something went on. So when I hear from people across baseball, current and ex-players, executives, media, scouts, player development people, and the answer is universally thank you. And we've been talking about these guys for 2 years now. Okay, 2 years. And the reality of the situation is I feel stronger about it today than I did Sunday. I'm not afraid to be passionate and direct about it, and I'm not afraid to stand up for a game, which I promise you, the commissioner is going to do that too. The commissioner is going to stand up for the game of baseball because you guys, these guys, have left them no choice. That's a good question. I wouldn't know Ryan, though. Can't.
All right, so that was Jeremy from back in, I think, around November, I think. A lot of people checking in. Elnora, very heartbreaking. Eric says, I'm keeping my replica ring. Cindy says, so what did Nolan Ryan know? Well, that's a lot of speculation right there. However, I would say a lot of people in baseball. Okay, let me rephrase it. What have people in baseball, what has been their reaction, the people that have contacted you today, what has been their reaction, and what have you gotten from them?
This is light. There are people who have suffered harsher penalties for less. Setting up Alex Cora to be the fall guy, and look, Alex Cora is extremely guilty. There's a divide in this game between the Luhnowites, we'll call them.
Okay.
Right? And some organizations have modeled their organization after what the Astros did and Jeff Luhnow on what he led. All that credibility goes out the window. It all goes out the window. Anything these guys did is suspicious now. It's not valid. It doesn't carry any weight. It calls into question what did they know? What did they really know? If you have to know and you're that good, you don't have to cheat. You just don't have to cheat. You can play honestly, and people are upset. There's a wide sentiment. This wasn't Lifetime. There's people taking harder looks at their organizations. There's some organizations out there that have recently doubled down on this type of person. The culture with the Astros, no matter what anybody wants to think, has been widely known across baseball. You're not seeing any of their free agents stay, right? You're seeing them argue once again with one of their best players and one of the best in baseball, and George Springer, about how much he's worth. I don't. This isn't. There's no tears for this club. There's no. Wow, we can't believe this happened. This is only looking for justice and vengeance to purge the game of what this element is.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. Did the Astros get stripped of the World Series? No, they did not. The punishments were as I mentioned earlier. Let's see. This is much better. I can see it now. Someone wanted to know, from a managerial standpoint, absolute right call, but it hurts, and I feel bad for our players and young fans. That's from Latrice.
That's fair.
But yes, the Astros are keeping their World Series title. However, there's a lot of fans out west who believe Dodgerland that basically their title was stolen and taken away from them.
Not just one, but two. Feel for the Dodgers. Look, as much as you guys have been through, players play their whole lives. A lot of people don't get there. Play their whole lives to win a World Series. Front offices, that's the goal, is to win. When you cheat and you win a World Series, and this is just Houston, we're not talking about Boston, you're cheapening and defrauding what other people are doing to accomplish your goal. That is an absolutely awful offense. And imagine putting yourself in a position where you've worked for promotion your whole life. You've worked for promotion your whole life, and you got to be a CEO of a company. You're going to be, graduate medical school, and all of a sudden somebody comes in and a job you're trying to go for, they cheat to get it, and you don't get it, and you never get another chance to get that position. How are you going to feel? It's not about the person that got it. Whether it's found out later, the damage is done. The World Series was won by the Houston Astros, and the argument is out there that it shouldn't have been. Now, it's not going to go away. Astros are going to be World Series winners, and they should be. Shouldn't have it taken away, and they shouldn't get an asterisk that was thrown around before. But it changes the view. It changes the view across baseball, just like the 1919 Black Sox. That team forever lives in infamy, not because they were talented, it's because they threw the World Series. Right? Through the World Series. So this is the same type of vein in how this team's going to be looked.
Chris says, so it's okay that the Yankees have always had players use pine tar. That is not on the same level as this. Bonnie says, basically, this is ridiculous if they don't go after all cheating teams. Jim Crane, in his news conference today, said that he has received assurances from Major League Baseball that they will be investigating basically everybody when it comes to this. Right now, the big investigation ongoing is the one involving the Boston Red Sox. A lot of people are wondering, well, why hasn't Alex Cora been punished? Well, that is an open investigation, and
Correct.
In this report, Major League Baseball Rob Manfred said that I think he is withholding judgment until they finish that investigation into the Red Sox. But I think you could say that there's a possibility that Alex Cora will no longer be the manager of the Red Sox by the end of the week.
There's some really good people in Boston. I mean, and I'm not saying that everybody that's been involved with the Astros has been bad. That's not the case. There's really good people in Boston. They have a good scouting department. They've got a new GM who's really smart. Dave Dombrowski was very good at what he did. They're not going to deal with this. They're not going to take this lightly. They've done a lot of work into merging the two schools of baseball, if you will, there in Boston. And there's no way that Alex Cora is going to keep his job, having been found guilty of doing this one place. They just have to finish what they're doing in Boston. And as far as investigating other teams, absolutely, investigate everybody. This was just the beginning of it, right? It's just the beginning of it. So they've got this one taken care of. They're on to team number 2. There's other clubs out there who are connected to the Houston Astros front office people that will be investigated for sure. And Major League Baseball is going to have some harsh penalties for anybody that's found.
Someone, Joseph, is saying that you should go back to California.
Okay, appreciate that. My mom will be happy.
Deborah says, what about Beltran? That is a very interesting situation. Because Beltran was a player at the time of this,
Yep.
It appears as though he will not be punished as part of this. That's the assumption that I got from reading this.
All players seem to be escaping discipline. And
However, maybe the Mets may want to distance themselves from him. I don't know.
It's hard to say what's happening in New York right now. They've got things they're focused on. I would be surprised if Brodie Van Wagenen and the Mets, let Carlos Beltran go. He is no punishment with Major League Baseball, and he's not going to have any. So, I'd be surprised if that happens. But, again, one team at a time. Everybody's going to deal with this differently.
And for a while, Jeremy, you have been a critic of some of the Astros methods.
That's fair.
Scouting, drafting. And you mentioned earlier here, you had mentioned that, and you've mentioned before, that the Astros have a culture problem, or had a culture problem.
Still there till everybody's gone, but yeah, they have a culture problem.
A lot of fans did not like those comments, but I think it's very interesting if you read this report on page 6. It says, but while no one can dispute that Luhnow's baseball operations department is an industry leader in its analytics, it is very clear to me that the culture of the baseball operations department manifesting itself in the way its employees are treated, its relations with other clubs, and its relations with the media and external stakeholders has been very problematic. At least in my view, the baseball operations department's insular culture, one that valued and rewarded results over other considerations, combined with a staff of individuals who often lack direction or sufficient oversight, led, at least in part, to the Brandon Taubman incident, the club's admittedly inappropriate and inaccurate response to that incident, and finally, to an environment that allowed the conduct described in this report to have occurred. Brandon Taubman is indefinite suspension. He says that he had no knowledge of the sign-stealing allegations.
Stop it. Everybody knew. Let's just get that out of the way right now. Everybody knew. None of this happens in a major league organization on the way to winning a World Series unless everybody is involved at the club level or higher. Meaning, the players knew, manager knew, bench coach obviously knew, general manager knows, assistant GMs know, and another assistant GM, Kevin Goldstein, sent the famous email right after that was found right after Mike Fiers alleged this had happened, right? He knew. Mike Elias knew. Sigmund Dahl knew. Anybody that's been connected as far as that knew. And look, I'm not throwing those guys under the bus with guilt because that's not for me to do. I'm just saying they knew. So Brandon Taubman saying he didn't know, that's completely false.
Some people said, will Mike Fiers, this is a good question, Juan, thank you. Yeah. Will Mike Fiers be blackballed from baseball? It's interesting in the soundbite that we played from A.J. Hinch that said, listen, if you've got some allegations against our team, all of you reporters with your unnamed sources, find someone to put their name on it. Well, we found the one guy who was willing to put his name on it. That was Mike Fiers. Mike Fiers, former Astro, who later became a pitcher for the Oakland A's, a guy who was on the staff in 2017, but essentially pitched his way off the postseason roster. Will he be blackballed from baseball?
AJ probably had some confidence making that statement, Jason, because there's a rule. You don't talk about what's happening in the clubhouse, right? You don't talk about what's happening in the clubhouse, and Mike Fiers did that. Even whether it was his clubhouse or not, he talked about what's happening with players. The game for many years and decades, policed itself, and there's some thinking that should have happened. It's going to be interesting to see how the players respond to that, because it's just not something that happens all the time. It's not something that's going to be, applauded by players around the league. There's other players who didn't want to talk about it, and understandably so. It doesn't change what happened. It doesn't change he was telling the truth, right? He was telling the truth about something that was involved in the integrity of the game. It's going to be interesting to see. Some players will be okay with it. Most probably will not.
Don has a very funny comment. Since everybody knows his Orbit's job on the line.
That's good. That's good.
But you know what? There's a chance that Orbit knew because because that monitor was right in the hallway where the dugout is.
Absolutely. The funny thing about this, it's not funny. The funny thing about this really is the staunch denial and accusations made against anybody who talked about this, right? This is obviously not new. If you have A.J. Hinch making the statement that he made, and you have a culture that's fostering this, and for other clubs to say, hey, we have a problem with this, that's how it's supposed to be handled. If you go so opposite of that and say, you're wrong, you're lying, you're not telling the truth. Stand up, put your name by it, and then it happens. I don't want to hear I'm sorry. I want to hear I lied. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear I lied. I want to hear we knew, and we tried to win a World Series with it, and hope we didn't get caught, and too bad we got caught.
Morgan says, Jeremy is making it seem like Houston started all of this and is the cause of it. Jay then says, this is MLB's fault for failing to be more strict with the Yankees and Red Sox when they were first caught stealing signs. He also means electronically. That was through an Apple Watch, right, I believe. That led to this. It's all stupid.
Let me address both of those things at the same time, okay? Jeff Luhnow absolutely ushered in an era of analytics and culture that has spread throughout baseball. There's no denying that. So the city of Houston isn't guilty. Jeff Luhnow is guilty, and he's no longer an employee of the Astros, and he's been suspended because of it. Are there other clubs doing it? Undoubtedly. Am I going to say who? No, I'm not going to say who. Major League Baseball needs to now address their culture issue that has spread throughout the game, why this is okay, and why people think this can happen. They are going to do that now. Rob Manfred has always talked about integrity of the game. Integrity of the game, integrity of the game. Well, Mike Fiers here was the whistleblower, and he blew it, and guess what? He was right. So Major League Baseball is going to investigate everybody else. They started with Jeff Luhnow and his culture, which, let's not forget, does extend to Brandon Taubman and Kevin Goldstein and A.J. Hinch and Sigma and Mike Elias and anybody else who's connected to that is them implementing the same practices that he did here. All of it's suspect, and all of it was started by Jeff Luhnow. So in that respect, Major League Baseball has a bigger problem than just one club.
Chloe, can you put up the Jeff Luhnow statement, which is in that article?
Oh, in the article?
Yeah, it's in the article. Yeah. I think it was in there. Yeah. Maybe it's... Yeah, so just to be fair, here was Jeff Luhnow's full statement, his first response. This was provided to the Wall Street Journal. And there it goes. He accepts responsibility for rules violations that occurred on my watch. I am deeply grateful to Jim Crane. I am not a cheater. Anybody who has worked closely with me during my 32-year career inside and outside baseball can attest to my integrity. I did not know rules were broken. As the commissioner set out in his statement, I did not personally direct, oversee, or engage in any misconduct. The sign stealing initiative was not planned or directed by baseball management. The trash can banging was driven and executed by players. The video decoding of signs originated and was executed by lower level employees working with the bench coach. I'm deeply upset that I wasn't informed of any misconduct because I would have stopped it. Now, that is what Jeff Luhnow said. Jeremy is sitting next to me shaking his head. So let me just read this part. Although Luhnow, this is from the report, although Luhnow denies having any awareness that his replay review room staff was decoding and transmitting signs, there is both documentary and testimonial evidence that indicates Luhnow had some knowledge of these efforts, but he did not give it much attention. The investigation also revealed that Luhnow, revealed no evidence to suggest that Luhnow was aware of the banging scheme.
So this is a guy, and Jeff Luhnow, who doesn't like people disagreeing on what to have for lunch, all right? He micromanages this club. He micromanages the people. No matter what you hear from now, anything that comes out of these guys' mouths is suspicious. It doesn't have any credibility anymore. And inside baseball, we're known that that's who he is. There's no way he didn't know. There's no way he didn't know. So to turn around and throw your players under the bus, protecting your management team and throwing your players under the bus, who wants to play for that guy? It's the exact type of culture we talked about before. Do
you think he'll ever be in baseball again?
I don't think so. And I'll say this, the only way, if he's back in baseball working for a major league team, we have a bigger problem with our hiring practices. If this guy can do this and get back in the game, we have a huge double standard that can't be allowed to happen. Major League Baseball needs to investigate clubs that hire this guy.
Did the report say if this also happened during the World Series or just in the regular season? It said
regular season and
regular season and postseason. Regular season and postseason. Angel says the only sports person that should have been fired today should have been Bill O'Brien.
Well,
we'll go back. Let's see. Ideas on a new manager. I'm guessing the guy first up to the plate would be Joe Espada, who was your bench coach this past season, and I believe the season before, right? Because Cora left. He was in many ways, supposed to be one of the favorites to land one of these open managerial positions, but he didn't get one.
You have to have some kind of stability a month out from camp. You have to do that. So, the likely situation now is everything happens internally, okay? At least in the interim. Clubs are getting ready for their own spring training. It's going to be very hard to get permission from anybody else. You have to remember this organization, we're not talking about this today. Forget the $5 million fine. They lost the first and second rounder for the next 2 years. They really need to scout now. They need to go find players. Their window is just about closed. Yes, they have good position players left, but the pitching staff is depleted, to say the least. And it's an uphill battle now with some of the additions in the West to reclaim where they have been. So with a system that's empty for all intents and purposes, and the guys they would have would be further away, with not too many big league ready prospects to step in and help now, and a big league team that is nowhere near as good as it was before. Now is the time that you see a little bit of consistency to get them to a certain point, and then somewhere after the draft, I think you see them hire a new general manager and decide if a spot is the guy, permanently, because the new GM is going to want to have his guy, and that would back up Jim Crane's comment about culture and changing this to prove that it's not what he says it, what he says it is.
Jim Crane today said that he believes he has a great team, still has a great team. We have touched on it quite a bit. I think it's going to be a struggle this year. And more so, Houston fans have been led to believe that this is a farm system chock full of prospects, and they just keep churning them out. And this model that was brought and instituted here would keep churning out players and to sustain itself. Well, newsflash, the system, as you mentioned, is empty. It is empty. Not to say that there's not major leaguers in there. No, we're not saying that. But as far as what Jeremy likes to call aircraft carriers, the guys who are real studs, it's really debatable if they have one or two of those in the system.
I mean, to me, the guy they drafted that's a championship player is Alex Bregman. And I say they. Let me not talk about the Astros when I say that. This front office that has now been, for all intents and purposes, wiped out. Mike Elias is gone, Nadal's gone, Luhnow's obviously gone. This front office that has just been here for the last 7 years is now. They didn't draft the players that won the World Series. What they did was they traded from a very deep cupboard left by Bobby Heck and Ed Wade. That's what they did. Carlos Correa and Lance McCullers were Bobby's last draft, and they're his picks. Dallas Keuchel was Bobby Heck draft. Mike Foltynewicz, who's with the Braves, Bobby Heck draft. Go down the line. Altuve was here before them. George Springer, Bobby Heck draft. How do I know? We were picking 12 in that same draft with Milwaukee, and the Astros picked 11, and as soon as Corey Spengeber went at 10, I said, there goes Springer. Because that's what they do. He drafts athletes. He drafts aircraft carriers. He built this system that went on to win and contend for 3 World Series, win 1. They need to go find guys like that who have, and by the way, while we're talking about this for a second, Tampa Bay Rays were just voted what, team of the decade? Mm-hmm. Bobby Heck's in Tampa Bay, has been since he left Houston. Guy's got his fingerprints all over this organization. It wasn't the Luhnow regime that did it. Now, what they did do well was they traded well, and they had waiver claims.
Phenomenal job.
They did a great job there, and no one's taken that away. But they've reached the end of maximizing what was left, and they should be applauded for that to a point. It's time to go find guys who can actually go restock the system, and now is the time to do it. So, again, consistency for now. The system is empty. It's time to go get it filled, and you got to start picking in the 3rd round.
And that's going to be tough because they have had a model. While there are some good people in player development, I would argue, and I think you would agree with me, that the last couple of drafts have not been. I don't think they've been very strong. They've been very strong.
These guys whiffed on 2 1-1s, and so let's go back for a second. There's a narrative that has gone in.
Hold on real quick. 1-1 is your first overall pick in the first round. So the Astros had 2 of those during the Jeff Luhnow era. One year they picked a guy named Mark Appel. Another year they picked Brady Aiken. Mark Appel did not last. He was eventually traded. Brady Aiken did not sign because the Astros looked at his medicals and found some issues inside his arm, and they felt this guy might be more susceptible to injury. They offered him less money. He didn't take it. And as a result, the Astros then got another pick the following year, which was the 2nd overall pick, which turned into Alex Bregman.
So they also had a 3rd 1-1, which is in 2012, and that was Carlos Correa. Okay, and there's a story. The story goes is that Luhnow still wanted to take Capel at the time. Was basically outvoted. Took Carlos Correa. That worked out pretty good. The guy they took in 2013 has a pretty good sandwich shop down the street now. The guy took 2014 turned into Bregman by sheer luck. Sheer luck. And he was drafted next year by Cleveland in the first round, but it's not Alex Bregman. So there isn't a whole lot they've done to refill this system. The best prospect they had in a while outside of Bregman was Corbin Martin. Corbin Martin was traded to Arizona for Greinke.
Blew out his arm, too, before that.
Correct, which, looking back on it, seems a lot better to sign Keuchel and Morton for that run instead of – this is all things, guys, you can go back and forth with what decisions they made and they didn't make, but the farm system needs to be rebuilt. Needs to be rebuilt in the third round. You're going to have more departures of players after this who have earned their money now. It's a different time in Astros baseball. So if it's going to happen, this is probably as good a time as any.
The golden era is nearing its end, unfortunately. A couple people want to say that they believe that Jim Crane should reconsider his decision on firing A.J. Hinch. Why fire A.J.? Jim Crane made it very clear, clean slate, because as long as those people were still in the organization, it would be a situation where people would essentially just hammer this organization for not being one that stands for integrity and the right way to go about things in this sport.
There's no question. There's no question. And he's almost got a clean slate, to be honest with you. He was fired by the club. Crane fired Luhnow. He fired Hinch. The only one left is Goldstein. There doesn't seem to be any discipline in there for him as of right now, right? So, the guys that were considered, I guess, the brain trust, and I guess the Pete Putila as well, 3 of those guys are gone. 4 if you count AJ. So it almost is a clean slate. It'd be interesting to see if he fires everybody else that's connected to this. But I'll tell you this, a new GM that comes in.
I got the sense that he was not going to.
For now.
But
a new GM comes in, and just like Jeff Luhnow eviscerated the club, the guys that helped rebuild the cupboard, and rebuild that system, a new GM's going to have every right to do that too.
Marcia says, how can you fire them when they weren't a part of it? AJ even broke the monitors. Double jeopardy isn't even allowed in criminal cases. Here's the problem with that, Marcy. This all happened, whether AJ didn't want it to happen, it happened. He knew about it, and he didn't take any steps to stop it. It's his dugout.
I fire Alex Cora right away if it's Alex Cora. I say, Alex, we're not cheating, and that's it, and you're gone. I'm not breaking monitors. It's nice that you did that. It's a nice display of emotion, but you still got a ring out of it.
Why do you think he would have broken the monitors? My guess is that in this report, it also mentions that some players didn't believe that this system of sign stealing and then delivering the signs to the players at bat, it didn't work.
I could have sworn we talked about that somewhere where we said that some players weren't going to want it. Right? It's no different than when a guy's on second base picking signs or a coach is picking signs. You don't want to hear it. You just want to go play baseball and react. Because what if they're wrong? What if they're wrong, right? You just want to go play baseball. And I promise you, there were some of the players that knew this was going on that didn't want anything to do with it. I promise you that, right? That's part of the reason why the players aren't being indicted here. But if I'm A.J. Hinch, it's my dugout, it's my clubhouse. I report to the GM. We're the ones that are leading, if you will, respective parts of baseball operations, on field and off the field. So you have to make sure that if there's anything that threatens what you're building, they're not there. In that clubhouse cheating, it's not going to happen. We're not talking about disagreement of opinion. We're talking about breaking rules. We're talking about doing something akin to conspiring with gamblers in 1919 to throw the World Series. That one's not valid either. In my mind, they threw the World Series. How do you know? How do you know? Same way here. So, look, we can talk about it. We can be upset about it. There's an emotional tie that develops with people who especially bring that type of success to a city that honestly deserves it. That's wanted for quite some time. I'm not emotionally invested in this because baseball's been my life for so long. I can just tell you this is absolutely the right decision to suspend. It didn't go far enough, and these guys have no place working in baseball again.
Real quickly, Chloe, the audio sound okay? There seemed to be somebody mentioned something about the mic. Okay. Chris says, so let me ask this. Where is the camera that was found to have provided the video footage in real time of the signs? That is the center field camera. Basically, it says here that at the beginning of the 2017 season, employees in the Astros video replay review room began using the live game feed from the center field camera to attempt to decode and transmit opposing team sign sequences. Again, those would be your signs flashed by the catcher. So basically everything that Mike fires mentioned in an article that the report from The Athletic. I mean, I haven't gone through it.
It's called 100%.
Okay.
It's called an A+. It's called you told the truth and you were found to be credible. So, guys, look, I wish there was a way to sugarcoat this, okay? I wish there was a way to make it feel better. I wish there was a way not for the city to be looked at the way they seem to be looked at. I mean, some of these wars on Twitter have been just painful with some of the fans from other cities to watch, because the Astros fans didn't do anything. The city didn't do anything. You're the biggest victims in this thing. You have a general manager and a manager and I guess a bench coach who defrauded your club from what it probably could have done anyways, win the World Series. They're a very talented team. It didn't need the help. It should have just played their game and let it happen on the field. And that didn't happen. So there's no going back. I mean, that time, you can't erase time. This has come down, and the best thing anybody can do is realize that is accept it, own up to that. This punishment in the baseball eyes was probably light, right? But it is what it is, and you have to go forward with it.
Marcy says you still have to hit the ball where they aren't, as well as have the pitching and defense to go with it. That's right, but listen, if you know a changeup is coming, if you know a curveball is coming, I mean, the whole thing that Jeremy talks about when it comes to pitching is making batters uncomfortable. Now, we talked about Justin Verlander, right, this year on the Extra Bases podcast, that Justin Verlander was giving up all these home runs this year. And what did you say? You said he's not making the batters uncomfortable.
Right.
And part of that is making it a guessing game for them. And when a hitter is at the dish and a pitcher has a 4-pitch mix and he knows which one's coming, you're right. The defense still has to make a play, but the chances of that ball being hit in play go up exponentially, and it's a chance for a guy to know what's coming, and it allows him to be comfortable. I can sit in the box knowing what that pitch is.
I take this back to an era not too far removed, and that's the PED era, okay? The argument is you still have to hit the ball, you still have to strike guys out, you still have to pick up the ground ball and execute the play. Guys, none of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. None of those guys in the Mitchell Report are in the Hall of Fame. Nobody's crying for Barry Bonds, and nobody's crying for Roger Clemens, and the answer is, well, everybody was doing it. Everybody was doing it. How about Mark McGwire and Rafael Palmeiro, who went to Congress and said, I didn't do it? How about that? Okay? Just like A.J. Hinch getting on TV or in front of a press conference and saying, hey, if you know what, we're not doing this, stop talking about my team. It's the same thing. It's a different issue, but it's the same thing. And none of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. So what you're talking about is you're talking about cheating. You're talking about cheating. And you can't get away from that. So just like Major League Baseball launched an investigation, found out the people that were lying to them were actually involved in it, right? The discipline is handed out beyond that. That'll happen here too. The game will move forward and be in a better place because of it. And I'm excited for that. So, I think the Astro fans need to accept it, understand that nobody at all who wants this to happen to the city, nobody at all, and including people in other cities, they don't want to see a team cheat. They don't want to see their city affected or the Houston team not win it, correctly. They want to see it happen the way it's supposed to. So, look, we got to move forward as a city, and it's okay to feel bad. The kids and the person made a comment about the kids and the fans and the young players. Absolutely, absolutely. So, it's going to be an interesting time in Houston baseball for a while, but we'll get through it.
I think Penny says. Penny perhaps sums it up great. You summed it up well. She sums it up in like 15 words. There's no way to sugarcoat it. They did what they did, and now they have to pay the consequences.
Perfect. Couldn't have said it better.
All right. So we've been on for what, 45 minutes-ish? Let's see. Players. Okay, Greta says players should also be punished too. Wasn't just the coach. I think that players received a pass on this because they needed the players' cooperation to conduct an investigation where they would hear the truth. They didn't want players, because ultimately it's the guys on the field who were involved with this. They were the ones who benefited, they were the ones who were part of this, but they were the ones who Major League Baseball needed someone to tell the truth.
It's up to management, Jason, to say you can't do that. Period.
That's
true. Management say you can't do it. You can't do this, you can't do that, this is illegal, you can't do it.
And it says here, actually, it says the players, they said, listen, a number of players thought this was wrong, but because the higher-ups, management did nothing to do. Here's a great one. Although the Astros players did not attempt to hide what they were doing from Hinch or other Astros employees, they were concerned about getting caught by players from other teams. They did not believe okay. Some players told my investigators they did not believe the sign-stealing scheme was effective. It was more distracting than useful to some hitters. I will not assess discipline against individual Astros players. The commissioner made the decision in September of 2017 that I would hold the club's general manager and field manager accountable for all misconduct of this kind, and I will not depart from that decision. So I think there's two parts to this now. It's they needed people to be truthful, and second of all, he had set a precedent by saying these are the people I will hold accountable, and those are the people he held accountable in this report.
This is an organization with a deep culture issue, and I know people don't want to hear that, but let's not forget, a few months ago there was an investigation before Game 1 of the World Series into Brandon Taubman and the comments he made directed at a media person, right, who was wearing a domestic violence bracelet. The Astros lied about the interaction there, covered it up after the fact, and had to wait till halfway through the the National Series to make an apology. This isn't something that's a good situation. This is something where all the people that were connected to that are gone, and they should be. There's no place for that in the game. There's no place for that in any walk of life. We're not talking about people who are innocent. We're talking about people who are guilty, who thought they were above the game and above the law. And again, this doesn't extend to the players or the Astros fans. This is a group of people leading a Major League Baseball organization. The biggest brand on the planet is Major League Baseball. And you turn around and you have culture issues like that, where you're attacking pretty much diversity, you're attacking domestic violence, you're attacking the integrity of the game, and you want to say you still have integrity and good culture, stop it. It's time to go, purge the game of these people, and let's move on.
All right, and because of that, it's now time for us to go. Jeremy Booth, former Major League scout, he scouted with the Twins, the Brewers, and the Mariners in that order.
In that order.
In that order. Of course, much more from Jeremy on the Extra Bases podcast. We have all the past podcasts available on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your stuff. You can go back. Please leave us comments on what you like about the podcast, what you don't like about the podcast, and much more on this story on KHOU 11 News at 10, and we appreciate all of you asking questions. And again, we appreciate everyone checking us out here on Facebook Live and KHOU.com. For Jeremy, I'm Jason. We'll talk to you next time.